Hey, welcome everyone back to the Dusty Wheel for another What Wednesday. We're doing something special today, which honestly is just an excuse for Thanksgiving to get around and talk with friends about the Wheel of Time. So I invited some guests to come into the studio, so it's going to be a little bit different. We're not going to do probably a live call-in portion because we haven't figured that part out when we have in-studio guests. We'll figure that out. We'll iterate and it'll get better. But I'm really excited to have with me tonight two podcasts that talk all about the Wheel of Time and other fantasy fiction and science fiction. So why don't we just jump right into it? Welcome Craig from the Legendarium podcast. Hello. And Drew and Lauren representing Inking Out Loud. How you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Awesome. So we just had the Starsight book release from Brandon and Sanderson yesterday. That was sweet.
Yeah.
Do you guys actually remember that? I mean, you were up pretty late.
Yeah, it's a little hazy.
So Drew and Lauren got suckered into volunteering. I got to go enjoy the event.
Yeah,
it was great. It was great.
I live streamed it. We live streamed it up there, and so we just kind of raced back up and did this, right?
Yeah.
Well, Craig, I've never met you before until now. And
Hi, I'm Craig.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
How did you begin? I mean, I saw today you guys won a Stabby Award for your work, which that was really cool to find out. And I saw that you began in 2014, kind of jumped through the site and took a look at what you're doing. You guys cover so many different authors.
Yeah.
And I jumped in the Wheel of Time and I was like, shoot, I don't have enough time to even catch up on any of this.
Yeah, so we started in 2014. And we started with The Lord of the Rings because my co-host Ryan had never read it. And for a nerd, that is, I'm going to say it is unacceptable. So I said, we got to read this. And I've been into podcasting since 2009. And so I said, we got to start a podcast. And we're going to read this and go chapter by chapter, something that nobody had done. There were other Tolkien podcasts out there, but nobody had ever done kind of a book club style where you had one expert and one newcomer to The Lord of the Rings. And so that's the style that we did, and we ended up mostly carrying that through to a lot of other things, going into the Cosmere and then going into Wheel of Time. And so I had a coworker who was a Wheel of Time expert, and I said, come in and ferry us across the Tarn and help us understand Wheel of Time. And so we did 31 Wheel of Time episodes with him.
So was that your first introduction to the Wheel of Time?
No.
Okay.
No, I listened to the first 10 books while I bike commuted in Seattle. So this is years ago. And I just wanted something that would suck up a lot of time.
How long was the commute to listen to 10 books bike commuting?
Well, so it took months, right? But the funny thing about it was I say 10 books when I think 13 were out at the time. And but I couldn't make it through 10, not because of the slog per se, but because after that many hours of Michael Kramer and Kate Redding's voices, my brain had literally tuned them out. I couldn't hear them anymore. And so I got to the middle of book 10 and I realized I had no idea what had happened for half of the book. So I went back and I started it again on audiobook, and the same thing happened. And so I just kind of put it away for a little while until we did it for the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
So have you only listened to the books? Or
no, I've got them all in hardcover, and I read them as well.
You've read them?
Yeah.
Which do you prefer?
I always prefer reading when I have the time.
Okay.
But it's the greatest thing to ever happen to any reader, but especially an epic fantasy reader, is the Kindle. What do they call it? Whisper Sync, where it'll keep track of your. It'll keep track of your Audible and your Kindle editions and where you're at, and so you get out of the car and you open your Kindle and it's right where you left off on your Audible, and vice versa. And so you can really whip through a book that way.
Yeah.
Going from the car to the bathroom to the car to the bathroom. Yeah, it's great.
Nice. That's awesome. And what have you been up to lately? I know Inking Out Loud is covering more of the Wheel of Time. Where are you guys at now?
Yeah, so we just recently recorded our second Lord of Chaos episode, and that brought us up to the Black Tower. And our next episode we will record hopefully this weekend if I don't get snowed into Utah here. We'll be covering the last part.
We're all praying that you get out of here as quickly as possible.
All of Utah.
But no, our big thing that we just dropped a Starsight episode yesterday morning. I was a gamma reader on that book, and my co-host Rob was lucky enough to get an advanced review copy, and so we recorded that a couple of weeks ago and dropped that yesterday morning. So for any of those speed readers out there who have already finished Starsight, they should go check out our episode. It's pretty fun.
So is it full spoilers then? In
Oh,
that
full
episode?
spoilers.
Yes. Okay. Oops.
That episode is dark and full of spoilers. But yeah, our kind of pace has dropped a little bit. We've just kind of had some life getting in the way lately. But we're looking forward to getting back up to speed and diving back to the second half of the Wheel of Time coming up here. So
anything hit you with Lord of Chaos this time through that didn't hit you in the 700 other times you've read it?
I think no. Other than maybe I'm a little more sympathetic to Egwene than I've been in the past.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, I
Thank
surprised Rob brought that up, that I kind of like her in the middle portion of that book when she's raised. But
Is it just because you don't have a tolerance for teenagers? Is it just like a root dislike now because maybe you disliked yourself as a teenager? I don't know.
Yeah, let's
psychoanalyze Drew.
Yeah.
No, I'm just not a huge fan of hypocrites. So
You're trying to say all teenagers are hypocrites? That's what you're trying to say?
well, not to the extent that
We have
certain
good
characters in the
teenagers.
Wheel of Time are, but.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah. So it's been fun. It's been going pretty well though. I mean, we're up to, I think we just Starsight was episode 42, so we're clicking along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so I brought you all here just to talk about obviously Wheel of Time and such, but I thought I'd bring out our Wheel of Game Time wheel, or the Wheel of Game Time.
Oh boy.
So we have a bunch of random topics that we've thrown into a list of 20, and I thought we'd just riff here. So, Lauren, do you want to try to give it a spin here?
What's
It's my job. Vanna White.
Wow.
Oh, that was...
Okay, no,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
unacceptable.
yeah.
Do it again, do it again.
This
Okay,
is like,
okay.
yeah, you have to go one full...
It's twisting on me. Okay.
There we go. That's reasonable. What do we get?
15.
15. Looks like we got show or no show when it comes to the Wheel of Time.
Ooh.
What is your feeling here? Like, I won't jump into mine. Craig, show or no show?
Show.
Show?
As in, should it
Yeah.
exist?
Should it exist?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm all for an adaptation, even if that adaptation turns out to be crappy. So
You say that now.
No. Here's why.
Okay.
I'm always happy to have more people interested in something like this, right? So this will bring in people who hadn't heard of the Wheel of Time before. Now it's going to piss off some fans. It's going to, whatever the nice version of that is, it's going to tick off some fans. And that's always going to happen with an adaptation. There are going to be those who can't handle the changes. But the single worst adaptation of all time is Shannara.
Have
you
I
seen
think
it?
I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
I think it's reasonable to say that because yes, I've seen it.
So it is the worst adaptation of all time, as far as I can tell, as far as fantasy goes. But the nice thing about that is it's so bad that it actually doesn't interfere with my love of the original. I haven't carried through any of the images, the characters' faces, or whatever. They're completely separate in my mind because it's so bad. I think the worst thing that could happen with this adaptation is that it's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being completely mediocre, that it's like a 3 or a 4. That it's just that side of bad, where it starts to interfere with your imagining of the Wheel of Time. So that's the worst possible outcome, and I'm okay with that.
Okay,
Right.
That's reasonable. Show or no show?
Oh, show.
Show?
Absolutely. I agree with a lot of what Craig said there. I also think, at least in this incarnation of the show, most of my fears for an adaptation about the Wheel of Time are a little bit assuaged because we have somebody like Rafe Judkins at the helm who is a huge Wheel of Time fan, and obviously there's going to be red tape around him that he has to fight through and stuff. I'm sure Amazon's got an army of editors that nipping at his heels and stuff, but he's got the vision and he wants to do justice to the series that we all love. So it's not just this mercenary money grab kind of a thing with a showrunner who's never read the books and he's just in there to cash in a nice fat paycheck.
Although there will be that.
Yeah, eventually.
Let's not kid
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah.
He will not be poor from doing the Wheel of Time.
No, he will not. But
I mean, he got some excellent travel in. I mean,
That's true.
whatever
Oh,
he gets
yeah.
out of it. I've been watching his Instagram, and there's beautiful pictures. Like, everywhere they're going is just amazing. Lauren, are you still there? Are you a show or no show?
I want to be the controversial opinion.
Do it. Just do it. It's like, make it like a debate. This is a mock trial from high school.
Shoot.
this is a trap.
I'm
Do
not
not debate
prepared.
Craig.
We learned that. We learned that already. No, you got to do a show because it's bringing people into fantasy who weren't exposed before, and that's always positive, you know.
You know what I like about this, the idea of this Wheel of Time, is with Game of Thrones, a lot of people said that, right? This is like a gateway to fantasy for people who really just want to watch kind of that medieval soap opera kind of stuff, right? But it gives them some fantastical elements, dragons and magic and all that. This could be, if they handle it right, kind of like that next rung up the ladder. It's like, you know, or the next step into the pool. We're just immersing you a little bit more, getting you a little warmer. Okay, no, fantasy's all right. Okay, no, that's a lot of magic, but we like it. You know,
Yeah.
But
Or-
I know how much you
yeah.
love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing that also here. So, do you think it's overload? I mean, I've heard that comment, like, we're going to get too much now. Like, Game of Thrones was so popular, and now they're throwing money
Right.
at every series that they can throw money at. Is it one of these situations where, you know, it's going to come in with so much that, from a competition standpoint,
Right.
that I guess I'm not saying I'm a no-show here. I love the idea that my family's going to watch it and actually know who these
Yeah.
characters are. But that's mostly like I get to watch these characters, you know, live with my family is kind of something I think. But
Well, for mega fans, we're going to be disappointed in 5 years when we all look back at this explosion of fantasy that we had, you know, circa 2018, 2019, right?
Right.
This explosion of fantasy, we're going to be disappointed because there will inevitably be, with all this spaghetti thrown at the wall, a lot of spaghetti on the floor, right? Not all of it is going to stick. And it's not necessarily going to be the case that the cream rose to the top. It could be that the Wheel of Time adaptation is great and not enough people watch it and it gets canceled quickly.
Right.
You know, it could be the case that happens, or, you know, that could be the case with whatever other adaptations, The Witcher or whatever else we have coming out these days. And so I think we're just going to have to watch out for that sort of, you know, the emotional issue that comes with that.
Yeah, and I think there is a little bit of tempering we need to do with expectations, where it's easy to say the Wheel of Time should be the next Game of Thrones in scale, because you look back and you say, well, when they started Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire had only sold, 5 million copies worldwide.
Is
Wheel of
that
Time
all?
has sold 100 million copies worldwide. There's a huge audience. It should be the next big thing, and I don't know if that's really a fair expectation, because Game of Thrones was a cultural phenomenon and a touchstone in a way that, you know, you can't just mimic that.
sure.
And so I think a successful scenario for the Wheel of Time show would be, a lot of people are watching it, but we're not looking for something that's just going to have this huge explosion of popularity that we saw with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I could take us off on a tangent there, but we have a wheel meant to take us off on tangents.
If we're going to spin the wheel, might as well
yeah,
spin
feel free to spin it off the side, and you'll get better spin here. So
I'm going to do that.
just do it.
Too hard.
Here we go. What do we got?
9.
9. See, 9 is a little bit controversial.
It's the eldritch number for luck.
So it's the newsletter that Brandon Sanderson recently sent out, where he said, "I'm a little bit uncertain about some things." Right? He was 100% in on some, and a little bit uncertain. So I want to talk about this idea about, and maybe it's the same thing that you were bringing up, Craig. Look, we're mega
you're talking
fans.
about the
a little
show.
bit uncertain
He's
about
aspects of
in
the
the
show.
newsletter he put out. He was
Yeah.
a little bit uncertain about some things, right? So when you think about that, this adaptation side for fans, where do you come down on adaptations in general? As far as how do you know when they've changed too much?
Right.
What's that moment? What's that moment? Because we're all a little bit uncertain. I don't know if maybe I'm wrong in thinking everybody at the table is a little bit uncertain.
There's definitely trepidation here.
Yeah, why don't you take this one first,
Yeah.
you guys?
In my mind, where the changes become too much is, generally speaking, when the vision of the author is just completely lost and it becomes the vision of the producer or the showrunner or whatever. I think that you can stick true to the vision of the author while still making some substantial changes. I think we saw that in the Lord of the Rings movies, for instance. Some of the changes with Faramir's character were very substantial,
violent.
Yeah, and some of the plot points at the end of the Two Towers are just do not jive with what actually happens in the books. But that said, the overall vision of those three movies was pretty much true to what Tolkien was doing, and that's why it was a successful adaptation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think. Okay, can we go back to Shannara?
Yeah.
I love crapping on Shannara.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite pastimes. Because I love the book so much, and I hated the series so much. And it's, and I think exactly what got lost in translation wasn't like some little design element or something like that. It was, no, there's a whole emotional and narrative arc that was just abandoned with extreme prejudice, right? And so that's what made it so terrible. So okay, so restate your question for me again.
Yeah.
And I want to see if I can address it a different way.
So considering that in an adaptation, from an
Oh,
adaptation
like,
standpoint,
where's the line?
Yeah, where's the line between they've gone far enough from a vision standpoint that you get
Right.
this isn't just a kind of scene by scene, give us what's in the books, but then they've gone over the edge and it's
Right.
too far.
So I'd like to talk about porn.
Go for it.
Great.
Oh wow!
No, I'm kidding.
The shark jumped.
No.
That, by the way, that might, if they've somehow worked porn into it,
Well,
you
The
know.
viewership
But
will
I
go way up.
guess-
No.
we're getting those bad scenes,
Those bad
and everybody
scenes.
needs to prepare themselves for that.
No, so what I mean is, it's the old definition of I know it when I see it.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
That's all I'm trying to
Yeah,
get at.
yeah.
Is there's everybody has a different line. I think the trick is going to be in this case that we have to come to it with some sort of humility and understanding and forgiveness for somebody else's vision.
Yeah.
You know, as long as like Drew says, Rafe and co. can at least adhere to what Robert Jordan was getting at, then we have to be ready to forgive a few of the things that we hold dear, that we think would be vital, but that it turns out upon further reflection probably weren't that vital.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think patience is a key thing here,
Yeah.
where there may be some dramatic changes in these first episodes that are immediately going to infuriate a lot of Wheel of Time fans, but if they stick with it, we might see, 2-3 seasons down the road, actually that change turned out really nicely, something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Lauren?
So there is one theme I'm worried they're going to really mess with,
Okay.
and that is Jordan's focus on like light versus dark, balance, men versus women, balance. Like if they try and change characters, like for instance, there was some discussion about a gender bended version of a character,
Sure.
and I think it would throw off the balance
I
of the
do
story.
want to say that's just a rumor.
I know. But in general, I'm
That's
worried.
one of our topics.
I'm
The
worried
random
that
wheel.
they will mess with the male-female balance
Interesting. Okay.
because they see it as, I don't know, unjustified. Just because in the beginning of the series you don't necessarily see his vision for it until you're, through it,
Sure.
through the series, and you go, oh, I get it.
You could though say that with the Dark One's influence, as in you can say that this idea of there's some firm lines.
Yes.
That the wheel itself doesn't. The wheel allows so much variation on the pattern, if you will. So
Yeah.
I could see them saying this is a different turning, and the way that you think of balance isn't the wheel doesn't perceive balance the way that maybe it's human beings in its world perceive it. What I'm saying is, I would, from a metaphysical standpoint, I would say that's that's where I geek out. So I'd be like, I'd be okay. Now, a lot of fans might not be. They might look at it and say, no, there's a specific, and I would be like, well, I might argue that point. But I
That's
hear
exactly what
saying,
I'm talking about. Everybody has their own. Robert Jordan had a vision, but we all have our own interpretation of what that vision is, and it plays differently with each of us. And so it does reach a critical mass at some point where enough people who are fans of the work take a look at what MTV does with Shannara and says, no, right?
Sure.
But I guess my point is, no matter how good the adaptation is, there's always going to be some disgruntled fans out there who are ticked off. So
fans are commenting that the mic here. The good thing is we're live and we can we can do these things. We can adjust these things live. Apparently the mic is tapping the. Sorry about that. It's tapping the the bar here. So let's see if that fixed it or helped it or not. But anyway.
Cool.
They're mentioning it, so
okay. Well, sorry everybody.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Shall we spin the wheel again?
Yeah, let's spin it. Let's see where we go.
Oh, Red Hunter wants the phone lines open. Sorry, Red Hunter, the phone lines aren't open. I would love it.
You do?
I'll do it.
Okay.
What do we got?
21.
21. We're going to go with who would win. So, Craig, you proposed an idea of who would win from a character standpoint. So I thought we could throw out some ideas of here. Match some characters. Why don't you go first, and then we can argue this.
Yeah, so what was my matchup? It was Avienda versus Matt.
Yep.
Is that what we're talking about?
In
a violent showdown.
Yeah.
And so she's a great warrior who has the one power on her side. Matt is a lucky warrior with the Foxhead medallion on his side. And so who's coming out on top?
Matt and Avienda.
I got this.
Okay, go for it.
Avienda.
Really?
All day long.
She's
you know why?
And I wish she would win, but Matt is Taviran and lucky and all that.
No, it doesn't matter. He hesitates. She does not. She's cutthroat. Like, she wins. Literally. She wins that match all day long. He hesitates at the wrong moment, right? Because he does.
Yeah.
Because she's female.
Right. Okay.
You know.
Avienda.
And she doesn't hesitate.
I guess we should clarify when in the series this showdown would occur, right?
Okay.
Okay. What do you think, Drew?
I have to say Matt.
Why?
I have to say Matt.
Why?
Yeah, for all of the reasons that I laid out, because we are one mind.
So, yeah, Craig and I have scary similar paths that our minds take.
You know he would hesitate.
See,
he does not want to kill a woman.
Yeah, but when push comes to shove, he doesn't hesitate.
No, he did though. Like in that battle in the tent.
I don't
battle
think
in the tent. sounds a little like that.
That was a difficult
Red Tube parody we're talking about.
Throwing a Taviran in. I mean, if you take away some things about Matt, but I feel like it just depends on what the wheel needs Matt for.
Yeah.
And is Matt more vital to the wheel's plans than Avienda? That's arguable.
Okay.
With some of the stuff that Avienda was key for, So I guess you could say that the wheel wanted them both. And so I would say on that one, the wheel, it's just depending. If this happens before the final battle, it wouldn't have let either of them.
Red Hunter says, post last battle, Matt easily. Maybe. Marisu says Matt beat Couladin. And that is something to consider.
I was about to bring that up. So. That Matt has, like, independent of his medallion and his luck and all that, Matt is a great fighter.
Yeah. Yes.
And also, this is the guy who took down Galad and Gawain simultaneously, and who took down, Couladin in the heat of battle, and he
there's no
goes
debate
toe to
there.
toe with the Golem. I mean, this is a guy who can fight.
So I don't know why we're spending so much time on this. Is it that you actually think Avienda would win, or is it that you want Avienda to win?
No, I actually think Avienda would win.
Okay.
I mean, post last battle, obviously her feet have been destroyed, right? But I think skill level, she has a lot of experience, and she's lived in a desolate wasteland where they've battled all their lives. And I think Matt hesitates, and I think that's the only reason she wins. Because he's lucky, normally, right?
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Okay.
all.
Does anyone else have a who would win?
So
scenario?
I have one.
Yes.
I have one.
Okay.
Furyk Kharid and Talmanes.
Talmanes. Because I know that name.
Furyk Kharid is the Death Watch Guard banner general who was Tuon's bodyguard.
He is-
Okay,
Awesome.
yes. All right, thank you. Later books, they're a little rough for me. So.
we might revisit him in a little bit depending on what this wheel lands on, but yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay,
Let's see.
Drew, what
Are
do you say?
Are live streamers still complaining about
I'm going
the,
for Furyk Kharid on that one.
Is there still an audio issue? Please feel free to tell us if there is still, if we're tapping on the
Well,
bar too
they're
much.
currently
Okay.
getting upset at our answers, so I think the audio's coming through. I think.
Okay, so
I want to spin.
yeah,
Hold it steady.
Spin it. Here we go.
4.
4 is let's go with villains that suck in the Wheel of Time. Now I have an obvious answer, and those that have watched the show at least for the last 14 episodes we've done, they already know my answer here. So
Define suck. Is it as in these are villains that we do not like?
Okay,
like
so
they suck that way, or like,
Yeah.
Bad
or
at being
they
a
were
villain.
bad at like Robert Jordan wrote them poorly. Or,
yeah, so I think you can take either of those avenues, if not a third avenue there, which is why do they suck? Because he wrote them poorly. Why do they suck? Because they're, whatever, however you want to get to that point.
Okay.
Why does the villain suck?
All right,
And pick
all
your
right.
villain.
Okay.
My villain is Ishamael as Baalzamon, not as
Oh.
Moradin. Ishamael as Baalzamon is a slapstick cartoon villain,
Yeah.
mustache twirling, just
Saturday morning cartoon.
just is his own undoing way too many times. Ishamael as Moradin is an incredibly compelling villain and is one of the best parts of the Wheel of Time.
A little pushback. I think I agree with you generally speaking, but not Fane. Jean-Mael as Moradin. Yeah, there a lot of people are saying Fane, so maybe we'll get to it in a moment.
People are saying face.
Just a minute. Is Moradin actually interesting in himself, or is he only interesting with regards to his relationship to Rand? Which is interesting, but like in a vacuum, I don't think he's very interesting.
See, I do, just because he has such a philosophical bent. He has very different reasons for what he does from most of the other of the Forsaken.
And he understands the Dark One better than the rest of them do.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Wait. Oh, so are we counting him like throughout history, like all of his hijinks, as Baalzamon or Moradin?
Well,
Like the times that he's escaped.
Because wasn't
That's
he
fair.
was
I mean-
Baalzamon since the second age or first age?
You're saying the true power makes you suck.
Okay, well,
maybe. I mean, I see what Lauren's getting at, and this is a good point, because during those little 40-year gaps when Baalzamon Ishamael broke out of the Dark One's prison, he really messed up the world each time. I mean, he caused the Trolloc Wars, he caused the downfall of Arthur Hawkwing, the War of the 100 Years.
Started the Black Aja.
Yep. So
I've got another one.
Yeah.
And this one comes to us from Kyle. He's one of my panelists. He's the Wheel of Time expert that shepherded us through the
excellent.
Sheep herded us through the story, right? Isn't that what they call Rand? Savannah.
Oh, I hate her.
So not only is she incredibly hateable, which is a thing, but she's also utterly uninteresting. She's totally one-dimensional. She's single-minded in her hateability. Like she's determined to make sure that everyone around her is, uninterested in her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like she's not fun to read in the way that a lot of villains are fun to read within the Wheel of Time.
But is it? Do you cringe when she's there, or is it just a lack of interest?
No, I
cringe.
actively dislike her chapters.
So but is it
yeah.
Is it like okay? So you cringe because you have to read these chapters and you don't like her. So it's not like that horror element where somebody actually picks up the phone when it's ringing, or they go and walk out the door when you're like, why did you leave the house? And they left the house, or they didn't pick up the weapon. It's not this intentional cringing. You don't feel like, in other words, did Jordan purposely make us, or do you think she sucks because she's poorly written?
Jordan needed someone to accomplish a certain purpose to drive the story.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, whatever, and he created Savannah.
Okay.
And so she doesn't feel like much of a character at all.
Okay.
Compared to a lot of people in the story, because she's just there as a narrative driver.
Okay.
This is gonna be funny because
you love Savannah.
well, I hate Savannah. She is without a doubt my least favorite character in all of the Wheel of Time.
Savannah shows lots of cleavage, though.
No, but she doesn't because she's got all the necklaces on.
Yeah, there you go.
No, she is. So I kind of addressed this a little bit during our Fires of Heaven episodes on Inking Out Loud. How Couladin is a sideshow. He's easy to see as this major antagonist, but the fact that Robert Jordan killed him off screen makes it very clear that he always considered him a sideshow, and that Savannah is the main threat with the Shido. She was the one driving Couladin that whole time, and she is the one who's going to be the threat to Rand going forward. And she's a particular kind of threat to Rand that we don't see otherwise, just in her methods and in her motivations, where she wants Rand for a plaything, and not even Greyandal wanted Rand for her plaything. You know,
right.
It's and in that way, I find her to be a compelling villain, but I just detest her. So
one problem that I have with Savannah is actually a similar problem that I have with Elida, which is that you can't help but wonder how someone so incompetent is in charge in something in a society that's so meritocratic.
Elida was very competent until she met Padan Fain.
He corrupted her. And then she
Here
became.
we go.
And this
All
is
right.
canon.
I'm out. I'm out. I'm way out of my
I accept
depth
your
here.
canon that you've just
Padan Fain has a line where he mentions how neither Pedron Niall, I think the line is, Niall and Elida might trust their mothers, but they will never trust Rand al'Thor since he brushed them with what he carried from Shadar Logoth. He definitely influenced Elida.
And she didn't do stupid things like let the trash build up in the city and stop focusing on, everything before him.
Okay.
Interesting.
I will say back to Savannah.
Okay, sorry.
They're trying to convince you.
We're not done here.
You picked some villain that sucked, and you're like, "No, I'm serious. You really suck."
I blame Kyle.
Thanks a lot, Kyle.
So
I'm happy to shut blame elsewhere. That's fine. Okay, go on, Savannah.
So with Savannah, I want her to have better motivations than she does. She feels like a child. That's why she's not the best villain for me. It's because I want, if she's going to be a villain, I want her to be a villain. Not some child who wants things that they can't have.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing up an interesting point, which is immaturity
Yes.
the villain that sucks the most in the Wheel of Time? You know what I mean? Is that the villain that we all wish we... And I don't know if it's just because we're now older. I mean, when I was a teenager reading these books, they didn't seem so lamely immature and annoying. They just seemed like people I knew. You know what I mean? Versus as an adult, I'm like, this is really hard. And so that's one of those, I'm trying to hold them to a standard. Now, some of the adults, I'm holding them to a more adult standards, and they still disappoint, But sure. Is that just a reality, in life, for example, is just, you run into it at work, you run into it at wherever you go, where you're just like, how did that person ever get married or have a job or get into this position as CEO? You bring this up about Elida. You're like how is it possible? I'm in a meeting and they're acting like X, And so it seems something very human and something that we're all annoyed by.
Yeah.
But maybe Jordan did a good job in bringing in that much cringeworthy.
Right.
No, I'm talking about two-dimensional kind of characterizations and such, or narrative drivers. I just mean that aspect of it bothers me the most of a lot of these people that I think of as villains. But anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my.
Fair enough.
Yeah, let's spin again. I'm done with this deep lore garbage.
3, 3.
3. Okay. So, stump Drew with Wheel of Time questions.
Yes.
Oh no.
So the difficulty
Do it.
here. So anyone that's watching us, anyone that's watching and is commenting in YouTube, we'll have Craig bring those questions to 4, if you will. But is there anyone here that wants to attempt to stump Drew with a Wheel of Time question? I think that's a reasonable one.
Oh no.
And I need a second to think about a question here.
I could never.
I have stumped him.
You have stumped him?
But that's like in the middle of a reread.
Okay.
And I found some random fact. And was like, what village did this happen in?
Okay.
How about this one? How many years did it take after the bore was drilled before Lanfear swore herself over to the Dark One?
Oh man.
It's like 3.5 tops.
Oh, I remember reading this.
Where's your white Bible now, Drew?
It has been a long time since I read the Big White Book.
Sorry, I picked Lanfear obviously because I like Lanfear.
Was it
Jared.
10 years?
I believe it was 5. No, someone's going to fact check me.
No, yeah.
Shoot, I was wrong. You stumped me too.
Well, you stumped me on that one.
Yes.
Even if I'm saying 10 years, but that is a guess. I know it wasn't too long, but it wasn't immediately after. 'Cause she wasn't the first.
No, she was actually
Randall was the first.
I
right?
believe Lanfear was the last
Yeah.
of the ones that we were of the 13 that we have.
So.
Did anybody come up with a question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I think you lose already. So,
Yeah. Off to a
so
great start here.
Dana Lou asks, who is Nakomi? I mean,
Oh, okay.
that one
You're
doesn't
stumped.
really count.
Well, yeah.
We don't have an answer.
Who are the strongest man and woman in the power in history?
In history, interesting. I don't know if we have.
I mean, the easy answers are
the dragon.
The dragon.
So yeah, Luce, Theron, Rand, Ishamael were all ++1. I believe Ravin was on that level as well, and Lanfear was the strongest woman. It was not possible to be stronger than Lanfear, so.
Okay, all right. So
wasn't
that
sure
was
we
Red
had-
Hunter. Thank you, Red Hunter.
I wasn't sure if we had a Big White Book if there was any change to that. So yeah, I can't
In
remember.
the companion?
Yeah.
Oh.
Alex asks, who is the innkeeper in Hinderstep?
Come on, Drew.
If you could pull this out,
I do not know that one.
What?
I haven't read The Gathering Storm in
I've got
6 years.
an even better one for you, but you can't get. Does anybody else?
by
know?
the way, this has surprisingly been easy to stump you, Drew. Come on.
I know, I'm struggling.
It's when you give people.
No,
When
there's
you get
Yeah,
people the
after I
challenge.
just said that we're only on Lord of Chaos in our reading, people are going for like Gathering Storm questions.
Hinder's tap.
that's awesome.
Okay, well, while you're thinking about that, what is the Dusty Wheels innkeeper's wife's name?
Are you serious?
I'm serious. She's sitting right over there. You should
In the
be
book?
embarrassed. You should. No. Oh yeah, that's a good question.
Is it named in the? Does Innkeeper Hatch have a wife in the book?
I think they're talking about you.
She is not named in the books.
Okay.
She's just named the wife of the innkeeper, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
But you could ask who's the maid, the barmaid. What was her name?
Again, we're going to the books that I haven't read in 6 years.
Okay, all right, all right, all right.
Dang it, Drew.
Okay. Question for Drew. Not Donnie Yen is a badass. That is not a question. What is the name of Varen's warder?
Tomas.
Okay. How many named characters are there?
Oh, it's like 2,874 or something like that. I believe
high.
it's 28 or 2,700 somewhere in there.
The innkeeper in Hinderstap is Tobrad. Thank you, Alex.
Tobrad.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
So there you go.
Well, there it is. We
All right.
stumped
well,
you.
I got stumped pretty hard there.
Yeah, you did get
You
stumped
knew
pretty
you
hard.
would be, though.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to
Drew,
give us a
you get to
spin, Drew?
All right.
17. Okay. Most underrated scenes
Oh,
from
I like
the Wheel
this.
of Time. The most underrated scene. Feel free to play along at home.
Okay.
Wow, you have
Yes.
No, I just the thing is I know so little about this series compared to you guys that like I need to come up with something, and this is a terrible answer,
No,
but it's
go for it.
mine.
most underrated scene.
Yeah, the most underrated scene is the first scene from every book. The first
The Wind.
chapter 1, The Wind. because its purpose is so cool, and I don't think everybody quite gets just what it accomplishes.
But speak to that.
Okay.
Go on.
So this is actually a Brandon point, and I kind of have taken it a step further than what Brandon has said before. But I was watching one of his courses. You can watch his BYU courses on YouTube, and he mentioned this, where the wind acts in the same way that the camera does at the beginning of a Lord of the Rings movie, where you've got this map laid out, and the camera's kind of flying over the map, and then it kind of hovers over the Shire, and then it zooms in on the Shire, and then it kind of morphs into Frodo's sitting against a tree, right? So at the beginning of book 1, the wind comes over the mountains of mist, and it goes into the forest, and it finds this path, and it blows along this path, and it's a really, really great way to ease you into the world and into a POV at the beginning of every single book that's extremely artistic, and yet informative and interesting, and accomplishes that purpose of, so you don't just start in the character's head, you kind of get a chance to see who you're entering into and seeing through. So I really like the way he did every one of those.
Well, now I want to go back and read them all and see if there's... Sorry, the part of my brain that's like, maybe there's something else hidden in those first scenes. In other words, why they were chosen and how they were... Anyways.
Yeah, the locations and things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, now real answers, please.
Okay, so I want to add to that and say I really hope they take that up in the show.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Please.
Like some leaves blowing on the path.
It's too easy to...
Yeah,
it's
just
too
do
easy
it.
to film
I
that,
know it's cliche now, but just do it, please.
Yeah.
Well, my most underrated scene is, in fact, my favorite scene in the entire series, and that is Rand using Kalendor against the Shanshan. It's really that entire 3-chapter sequence. I love the visuals, but B, what it means for Rand in that moment. This is when Rand falls first. This is his first defeat, even though it's sort of a victory. It's a defeat for both sides, you know. And it's when he inadvertently kills Jonan Adley. And, you know, we're starting to see the casualties of Rand's choice to announce the amnesty and build the Black Tower. There's so much tied into this sequence that is important for how the series is going to develop from there. And, of course, we have this incredible battle sequence, you know, this campaign through the mountains culminating in Rand making it literally rain lightning, which is just beyond cool.
Yeah.
So, that's my...
So why do you think that, and when you say underrated, why do you think that is?
Because, people, I feel like, tend to forget about it. People underrate Path of Daggers as a book in general. I see a lot of people, you know, on the forums online and stuff, citing Path of Daggers as their least favorite book, and then I'll reply and I bring that up.
In a world with Crossroads of Twilight.
I know, right? and I'll bring that up, and they'll be like, "What? Whoa! I totally forgot it." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's some awesome stuff in that book," and it's so easy for people to get wrapped up in the idea of, you know, the plot, the Perrin and Fael plot line of death, you know, and the interminable succession war in Camelin, and forget that all that stuff starts after Path of Daggers. Right. You know, the last chapter of Path of Daggers is when Fael is taken. You know, Elaine finally arrives in Camelin in the second half of Path of Daggers. You know, and then she doesn't get any more points of view, and then we move on to, you know, all that in Winter's Heart, and you know, and the Saladar group, they don't. Path of Daggers ends with them traveling to Tarvalon. You know, it's easy, I think, for a lot of people to kind of conflate things, and they forget about the cool stuff in some of those books in favor of the not cool stuff, because it's such an accepted thing in the community to bash on the slog.
I mean, the Path of Daggers begins with Varen in the prologue. I mean, that's the coolest moment because I love Varen. where you actually kind of get behind the scenes of what she's doing, which to me that book has never been that. It's not in my top 5, if you will, but it is definitely that. And it just could be that one scene. I wouldn't have cared about anything else having to do with the Path of Daggers.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's also the scene with Varen in that prologue when we find out that Damer Flynn healed Severing.
I believe so. Yep. Yeah.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
Red Hunter says the healing of the gentling, which I think is a great
Fire
candidate.
and Spirit. Great chapter.
I think I don't know how underrated it is, but maybe it's along the lines of it's just one of those ones people might not think of as much.
That's a really good one because I would immediately say yes because, but again, I don't know there's part of the writing of that where big things happen often in very kind of quiet, unassuming ways. In other words, and so writing every important thing in a bombastic kind of way would be, I don't know, it wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those where it just happens and you're like, okay.
It's like, sweet, that was fun.
This thing just changed.
But then, 2 chapters later, Egwene's race to the Amerlin seat, and you totally forget about how cool that was.
There's this big thing that's happening where it's like, but that's a great...
I think that's a good call out.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Absolutely.
Lauren, what about you?
Anything else? Yeah.
So, I feel like I'm forgetting a couple scenes, but as far as the last battle, I feel like a lot of people gloss over Padden Fane versus Matt. And
this is
I'm
controversial. This is going to be controversial.
Yeah, a lot of people did gloss over that, including one Robert Sanderson.
Oh, wow. But go on.
Okay, so we talked about it recently where it was confirmed that that power didn't just go away, right? When Fane was defeated there. It's still there for somebody to pick up.
This was confirmed? Is this a
Well, yeah. Well, the dagger melted into the ground, and that power is just sitting there.
Yes.
Yeah, so this has been a theory of mine for a very long time.
Yeah, we discussed this at JordanCon 4 years ago.
I love this aspect of that story. Again, it's very unassuming, and you miss it because you want something big to happen.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
You do.
One would hope.
Okay, I mean, as someone who loves this character with Morda, the Padden Fane, or whatever, Shazma, whatever the last name, Shysam, whatever how you pronounce it, Shazam. However you think about it, do I want something bigger to happen there? Yes, but if you take the journey of that evil.
Yes.
If you take the journey of that virus, if you take the journey of that part of the story, and you just see it as traveling and having an idea, a goal, giving it kind of some sentience is the wrong word there, but giving it some purpose. To me, it just shows that Padden Fane was just like a pawn. He was a thing to get somewhere versus, and so I like it as the carrier idea. I love it as thematically that Padden Fane was just carrying this thing to where it eventually wanted to be. So that's just something I love about that.
And the flip side of that I've always kind of believed and theorized about is that Padden Fane was being set up so that in case Rand killed the Dark One, there was another Dark One right there to take his place. And when Rand made that decision not to kill the Dark One, Fane wasn't needed anymore.
But the only problem I have with that is that Jordan did say that he had sidestepped the pattern in some way. In other words, that
Fane had?
Yeah, that Fane was not being... he wasn't tied to the wheel in such a way as you might think of every thread. So that's my only... Now, Jordan didn't explain sidestepped. He didn't... You'd have to go back
how does that drive with the natural, unnatural power?
Well, again, it's the mix with the... Well, yes. A whole show discussion of the Padden Fane, but thank you for bringing that one up. That one's great. Yeah, now, I see anything in the comments there?
I think we're good. There's Feral Land. That's a great one. The Wonder Girls thanking Matt for saving them. Deathgate.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Vows. Vows in Knife of Dreams. the manor at Algarin's manor.
Oh,
when
yeah.
Rand weaves Death Gates for the first time and Blossoms of Fire.
That is
Okay, but I don't know if that's
epic.
underrated.
I mean, that's an awesome scene.
That's an awesome scene.
All right, so let's,
Okay,
let's
here we
spin
go.
again.
Okay.
Spin again.
My turn.
Do it.
I want it. 10.
10. Ooh. So, we have rant. It's a general topic for Wheel of Time.
I'm so good at ranting.
Rant.
Yes.
What is
go.
when it comes to mind, like the Wheel of Time rant? Someone says,
Oh,
"What would
man.
you rant about? What's in your mind about the Wheel of Time?" This is an open category.
This is dangerous.
I know.
You want to pass it off? Drew, do you have a rant?
I mean,
I
have a
always
lot.
have a rant.
It's-
Oh, you have too many.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I don't have quite the same history with it that you guys do, so I'm sure that you would have better rants than I would. They call me Rant Althor, actually. I couldn't let that one go. I mean, I can't be the only one who thought this.
But
No, I want somebody go first.
Yeah.
And
Do either of you have
do you
one?
really
Drew.
want to let me do this?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I knew
I want to
you
hear
did.
what's your rant. Is this a known rant?
So
should we leave you
earlier
alone?
I talked about how I was a little more generous toward Egwene in Lord of Chaos.
Oh, here you go.
Here we go. All right.
But let's rewind a book.
So, Egwene, she's your rant, huh? Okay.
I mean,
Go for
it's
it.
too easy.
Your rider rant.
Oh.
No.
It's too easy. And
That should have been the category.
yeah. The fact that she summoned these monsters on Nynaeve and why she summoned these monsters on Nynaeve in, I believe it's chapter 14 or 16 in The Fires of Heaven.
Okay.
I didn't realize
It's
how
one
awful.
of the worst things any of our heroes does in the entire series. This is supposedly one of her closest friends, and Nynaeve is essentially annoying Egwene because she is doing what Egwene herself had just finished doing with the Wise Ones. When she was going off by herself in Tel'aran'rhiod, and Egwene, even though she has no authority to do this, takes it upon herself to teach Nynaeve a lesson that she is not prepared to teach, and summons what are essentially rape demons, who begin tearing Nynaeve's clothes off.
That was my prison
And-
nickname, by the way.
Yeah. and it's
Really?
there are really only two ways you can approach this. One is that it is a mistake on Egwene's part that she meant to just scare Nynaeve,
Sure.
and she lost control of them.
It doesn't seem like you want to take that route.
Well, honestly, that route could be construed as worse because it is I mean, willful ignorance and negligence that she would do something that could result in severe harm to one of her best friends.
Sure.
Or she did this on purpose, and she went way, way over the top. Her initial, reaction is extreme violence to drive home a point that is in and of itself hypocritical, because this is the exact same thing Egwene did, and is in fact still doing, going behind the Wise Ones' backs. Like,
Sure.
the whole scene is my biggest problem with Egwene as a character, probably in the entire series.
Okay, but let's try to parse your rant here. So Tel'aran'rhiod, for someone that is a novice, right? Like that's what the Wise Ones are concerned about this topic, obviously, because they know that those things that she did are possible for anyone with her capabilities. In fact, I would say that most people that are not trained, that are able to do those things, probably have done worse things in Tel'aran'rhiod, not knowing what they're doing. In other words, are their imagination, their capability with it is bringing to life things that, let's be honest,
Perhaps bringing to life things, but not to another actual human being in the dream.
Sure. There's that aspect, but you have to again go with the. Can she control the whole thing? Was she purposely doing this thing? And it doesn't seem to make rational sense to believe that she would summon, what do you call them, rape demons? to the idea that would be like something she would do to her best friend seems so out of character.
It is. Well, I would say it's extreme. It's not necessarily out of character, because we see Egwene on several occasions immediately jump to violence to solve her problems.
Oh, she is the best.
But if we're gonna go with the fact that maybe this or the theory that this is an accident, it is at its core extraordinarily hypocritical and criminally negligent. I mean, Nynaeve's waking up with claw marks down her neck and chest. It's and she's lucky that Egwene got it under control in time to stop it. That scene sits so poorly with me. And honestly, I hope they, if we get to that point in the show, that they just erase that entirely.
Oh man, I hope they include it, but only from the perspective of. Well, sorry, that sounds really bad. I don't want to see Raven. Okay,
Somebody,
right, rewind.
Somebody cut that part out of the video. Yeah.
I hope they include a scene like this, which is to say, look, it's that old cliche of with great power comes great responsibility, and I don't think anyone learns quickly with great power. And she has great power, and she's young. It's not like, are you going to say that Rand did not ever abuse his powers?
No, I'm not saying he never abused his powers. I don't think Rand ever did something that bad to one of his closest friends.
I mean, I would say that we were shown and that we knew of. But yes, I mean, as far as, do I think that he didn't, I wouldn't put him in Tel'aran'rhiod to do such a thing. It's such a unique thing to have done in Tel'aran'rhiod. I don't want to belabor that point, but that's interesting. Yeah. Interesting rant. We should have clearly a session.
Yeah.
We should do a session about Egwene.
Well, that's
oh goodness.
Just like one show.
It's open.
Okay. Last spin of the night. Let's
do it. 16.
16. Okay.
Do that one?
No.
17.
This is a funny. I don't think this is. We just talked about. Well, best female character is what came up, but we just kind of jumped in those.
So this besides Egwene.
Yeah.
Punch you in the face.
So let's jump to this one. Doesn't get talked about a lot. Best relationship is an interesting one here.
Like
to
this.
me,
Right.
We always talk like best relationship is a topic. Does it?
Oh yeah.
Time,
So
best relationship.
Elaine and Val and Luca. It's just
Nynaeve and Val and Luca. No, I have one for this. To go back to a previous character I mentioned, Karyd and Tuon. I love that relationship between the two of them.
Interesting.
It's a very different dynamic. There isn't any kind of creepy romance undertone. It is just an earnest, protective man who does his duty, and his duty for so much of his life was protecting this girl, and he is seeing her turn into the adult and the ruler that she was always meant to be. And I think that culminates in the scene under the oak at the end of Knife of Dreams when Tuon announces, Matt Cawthon is my husband, Matt Cawthon is my husband, bloody Matt Cawthon is my husband. And Karyd, I think the line was, it felt like Aldazar, his horse, kicked him in the gut. Because this is a guy who, up until that moment, saw Tuon as the girl that he needed to protect. And this is when he's finally seeing, no, she's an adult. She has become what she was meant to be, and I don't need to have that same attitude of that fatherly protectiveness anymore.
Yeah.
But we got to see all of that in its earnest, just fun greatness as he's freaking out when she's kidnapped and all of this, and he's investigating with the Seeker more, and doing all this, going to all the wrong conclusions, and I just love their relationship.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
A lot of great pairings coming in on the chat.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Matt and Telmanas, Pavara and Androl.
Yeah. Yes.
Lan and Demandred. Matt and Brigida is a good one.
Yes.
Oh, man.
But
Yes.
as far as the one that is the most emotionally satisfying, maybe it's got to be Tam and Rand.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And even though they don't get that much screen time together, so to speak, throughout the series, but there's something about how the glimpse that we get in book 1 carries us all the way through to, what is it, book 11 or 12 when he shows back up. and it informs so much of who Rand is.
Yeah.
A little bit annoyingly at times in 1 and 2, or 3. But anyway, then when we do get Tam back in the story later on in later books, their relationship is so mature in a way.
Yeah.
Even from Tam, who obviously is a more mature person, but he's not trying to be Rand's dad anymore, even though he knows he's still a father figure to him, right? He knows that this is way beyond me. He's off doing his own dragony thing. I love how they both treat each other eventually, from the beginning to the end, and
that's one of those with the television series that I wonder if we're actually going to dig into more. I kind of wonder if they're.
I was going to bring that up. How much is everybody looking forward to seeing Roose Bolton fathering Rand?
I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see him play a more sympathetic role.
By the way, we need for a category to be. What did you call it? Creepy underlying romantic. Best creepy underlying romantic. Undertones. Next time we do this,
scene that I really hope they cut from the show: Elaine flirting with Tom at the beginning of the Fires of Heaven. That is just so unnecessary.
By the way, I'm going to go on record again. I hope we see. No, I'm just kidding.
So I'm going to go ahead and disagree with a viewer here.
Okay.
Sean Harriet says Perrin and Hopper. I find this relationship not interesting, not fun.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't.
I find your opinion interesting about it.
I don't think. So here's maybe my rant. Is Hopper not that interesting?
I'm with you.
Thank you. Not that he should be cut from the story or anything, but so much time, so much ink is spilled on Hopper. But it's made clear many, many times throughout the books that he's just a wolf. He can't process things in the same way. Yeah. He can't help Perrin in the way Perrin needs to be helped. I don't know. I don't like reading him. I don't.
Yeah, I have a controversial take, and that's the most interesting thing Hopper ever did was melding his soul with Perrin, so Perrin could enter Tel'aran'rhiod in the flesh.
You guys,
spoilers.
You guys.
If you're still around listening, you know spoilers.
Welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
We jumped that line a long time ago.
Well, there's obviously more Wheel of Time game time that we need to be doing. Yes.
We didn't get Lauren's favorite.
Sorry.
Yes. Shoot. I mean, I was going to expand on Hopper. I see what everybody sees in Hopper. You ready? Okay.
Wow, you're.
Are you a furry?
You're defending. You're supporting Sean in the chat. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Is our marriage about to get really rocky?
No. So here's the thing.
Okay.
His story is heartbreaking, where he's this pup who wants to fly, and figures out that he can't fly, and is killed, and you're just like. Oh my god!
Why was it?
Yeah, no.
That didn't sell it. That didn't sell it.
Dang it! I need to perfect the spiel of Hopper speaks to me because he's saved.
Right.
But
yeah. But he also speaks to Perrin and nobody cares.
Wow. That's brutal.
I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm with Craig on this.
Dang it. We'll have this discussion later.
It's going to be a long drive home.
Thank you for all three of you coming in. We're going to have to do this a little bit more often. For those of you that are watching, I should turn around. The other video went out. We had problems there. We had audio problems. This reminds me of our first live stream we did, and this is a first for us. Which is we'll figure out this format of having in person. We'll get Colin back in. We'll do all those things. Yeah.
Jennifer says, "Let her talk."
Oh yeah. Sorry, Jennifer.
She'll beat the crap out of me.
Yeah. So what I hope we do is. This a little bit more often, but get the audience a little more interacting on the call-in side. But we'll hopefully, Craig, you and I can do something here shortly, and maybe it's a one-on-one. Maybe we'll have you as a special guest on one of the monthly announcements we do.
Oh, fun.
And so that's a reminder. Next Wednesday we do the Wheel of Time on Prime does a monthly announcement. So next Wednesday we'll cover that live, and it's a lot of fun. So for those of you that are watching, please subscribe, follow us, or just come back next Wednesday. We do a show every Wednesday around this time, and we'll do more of this stuff. Which this is a lot of fun. This little round table live, and we'll do more of Wheel of Game Time. But anyways, thank you all for showing up, and good night, everyone out there. Goodbye.
You're from behind.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.